Irish Hammer. West Ham 2019-2020 season retrospective. Pellegrini was indeed at the wheel now, and the first order of business was the sale of Marko Arnautovic. Something I failed to mention in my last retrospective was the Arnie saga. This was similar in many ways to the long drawn out Payet saga that had occurred before. In January of 2019, Arnie tried to force his way out of West Ham, with his brother trying to artificially create a move away to an unknown club at the time. This failed, and there was a lot of backlash. People felt betrayed by Arnie, someone they had come to trust this past year and a half. So West Ham made a video with the man himself proclaiming everyone had got it wrong and that he would be staying at this club. This was of course untrue. He waved goodbye in his last home game, and of course Arnie was off that summer for a bargain price of £22 million to China. This was less than the £25 million he signed for, and made little sense as his profile and skill level rose in this time. It was just his bad personality that prevented him from getting bigger resale value, as no one wanted to deal with his drama. Arnie was clearly in it for the money, but luckily when he left he didn't go to a rival team. His manner of leaving and disruption of the team was unprofessional and childlike, although I suppose it is something we had come to expect from this footballer. Still, there was a great deal of wasted potential from this burgeoning footballer, but we can be thankful he didn't go to a Premier League rival like Man United, which was hinted at the time, but instead a far-flung Chinese club where he could not impact us in any way after his departure. The summer was a quiet one following the extreme noise of last year. Incomings mainly fell to two new exciting players. The first was an interesting midfielder from Villarreal named Pablo Fornals. This player was shown to score some incredible goals and had a lot of potential in him. The price tag was quite high though, being 24 million, which is the same as Arnie and maybe not so polished as people would have wanted the player to be. Personally, I was slightly underwhelmed with the signing. Next up was the exciting replacement for Arnie. The extremely prolific Sebastian Haller signed for a stunning 45 million price tag, smashing the 36 million we spent for Anderson the summer prior. Haller had played beside the likes of Jovic and Rebic in an exciting attack at Frankfurt. The question was, could we replicate this at West Ham? It was hard to know. The one thing we knew though was that he was a guaranteed goal machine, which is something we needed at the moment given our striker problem. Other more under the radar signings were goalie Roberto, a backup striker Alvin Ajetti, and backup goalie David Martin. Outgoings were extremely rife, with Hugill and Diangana being loaned out, one of which had plenty of potential, the other was Jordan Hugill. In terms of permanent transfers, Lucas Perez and Pedro Obiang both left the club. Pedro Obiang had quite an underwhelming season, whilst Perez was quite old now. Adrian left the club after he was released, after which he joined Liverpool, which would be a big miss as we would come to learn. He had some great moments at the club. Samir Nasri and Abdou Carroll were also released. In our first Premier League game, our welcome wasn't so warm as we conceded 5 goals to Man City. We got thrashed around and Diop wasn't too solid as a defender, with some mistakes in his game. But it can be strongly argued that City were just on another level this season, so nothing could be enough against these foes, and they were just starting so strong. I still expected more having said this, and a scoreline of that magnitude really isn't acceptable no matter who you are playing. Effort is everything. A point was secured against Brighton, where they had a goal ruled for offside by VAR, the new technology that was raising some eyebrows this season. We scored a sublime goal with Lanzini playing a fine assist to Chica with a great run by Manu. Haller nor Fornals appeared in this game. Brighton equalised after this. In our next game against Watford, we triumphantly won 3-1 thanks to an exquisite run by Haller for his first goal and a great bicycle kick for his second, imprinting his name on the squad, showing what a great striker he could be given the correct serves and also how entertaining he could be. Noble also got a penalty and we dominated this match with a 4-2-3-1 lineup. Could we continue this result into the next game? The answer was yes, with a convincing win over lower league side Newport County in the League Cup. It was 2 simple finishes in this game, one from Wilshere and one from Fornals, both their first for the club. Roberto and Ajetti made their debuts in the game but were fairly quiet. The Hammers really dominated the next game with an attacking showing from the front three of Yarmolenko, Haller and Anderson. Norwich were being cut open on the break with West Ham's speedy defenders, lightning quick counters and smooth passing from midfield. Masuaku laid down a great assist for Haller and Yarmo made up for his terrible mistake earlier with a superb volley. Following on from this game, Chicharito departed the club after not getting enough playing time for a long time and moved to Seville. This was a sad sight to see, but the writing was kind of on the wall when Haller came in that Chico would not get the minutes he desired, although personally, I still believe that the bench is where he belonged at this stage in his career. The club was reluctant to sell after the Antonio injury, but they couldn't turn down the 8 million price tag from Sevilla. but I believe this is low as we brought him in for 16 million. Notice the pattern was buying high and selling low. I blame this on the board. The 4-1-4-1 formation continued the next match against Villa, but Masuaku was sent off after 2 yellows. It was a new formation, possibly to adjust to the squad, something that Pellegrini was really fond of doing. The Hammers somehow held on to a goalless draw. It was a poor showing from them with few chances. The solid form, however, continued with an exquisite and dominating win 2-0 over Man United. An excellent finesse finish by Yarmo and an exquisite free kick by Cresswell capped off a great display where we played our best football so far on our home turf against an ailing Man United side. Masuaku slipped in the next game in a terrible manner to give one of the 4 awful goals away in a notoriously bad cup night for the Irons. Oxford United ran riot on us. This was in complete contrast to the dominant win the Hammers had just had and made 0 sense. Inconsistencies in general had summed up Pellegrini's tenure so far. An even game arrived next, where I do feel, however, we could have secured the victory against the Cherries. In the end, it was a 2-2 draw away from home in a game where Anderson felt like the star, supplying lots of chances. An exquisite finish came from Yarmo as well, happily returning to form after a long injury was a positive to note. His finishing ability and eye for goal were sorely missed. It was, however, the injury of Fabianski in the game that would pose problems for some time to come. The home game that followed provided a lot of controversy as we fell to Crystal Palace after a sloppy handball giveaway and a tight VAR offside gave them the win, cancelling out our fine team goal. This came right at the end of the game as well. Our solid start to the season looked to be dissipating slightly. Things really seemed to be crumbling in the next game with a poor display against Everton, who scored 2 stunning strikes. We were very blunt. The boys in claret and blue really should have finished off their dinner in the next game with an excellent pass by Roberto and Yarmo to set up Snodgrass was cancelled out by a scrappy Mousset goal against Sheffield. Snoddy should have finished off Fornal's cross also. Meanwhile, Newcastle played truly out of their skin in the next game thanks in part to the brilliance of Alan St-Maximin. The Hammers saved their blushes slightly, but it was too little too late. Roberto had an absolute howler in the next away game against the Clarets in Lancashire, where he passed the ball into his own net. This followed a slew of great saves by him in previous matches. It must be said, however, that his positioning and overall influence on commanding's area had been poor this season. The horrific defending continued as we conceded yet again from set pieces. We conceded 3 goals and couldn't answer back once. In what felt like a repeat of this game when hosting Spurs, West Ham conceded 3 goals in quick succession before answering back with just not enough. Roberto conceded yet more horrific goals and the overall status of this club was at an all-time low. Also, the 4-4-1-1 lineup that replaced the 4-1-4-1 felt a bit isolating, with Haller threatening but not finishing, and there was just not enough quality in midfield. In the next game, the hero Aaron Cresswell, West Ham true and true, came to the forefront with a stunning goal. Antonio threatened and David Martin made an excellent debut, coming from the reserves to save us from the awfulness that was Roberto. Fabianski was injured at this point in time. West Ham got another memorable win against Chelsea, which is always a beautiful thing to witness. Antonio was injured in the next match against Wolves, which didn't help proceedings. West Ham were beaten with ease and the Hammers looked barren up top. A Pepe masterclass helped the Gunners to secure 3 points on the road against us after we capitulated within 9 minutes. Ogbonna's helpful header wasn't enough. After being denied some clear chances by VAR, West Ham secured the 3 points on the road against the Saints to end some misery in the last few games, thanks to the return of the scoring Haller with a smart finish. Props to Antonio for the setup, but questions had to be asked where Sebastian had been all the time. A switch to 4-4-2 did not help proceedings as Roberto was back in goal following the David Martin injury for a game at Selhurst Park. A stunning assist by Antonio to Snodgrass for the opener was cancelled out by defensive fail, an excellent goal by Jordan Ayew. Fabianski marked his return in the next game and now another changed lineup with a 4-2-3-1, but the defence continued to be shambles as the Vardis Leicester beat us on our own turf as we were cut to cinders at the back. Pellegrini's 18-month failed experiment at the wheel had ended as he was sacked following this defeat. From what had been a positive start to the season had turned into a complete nightmare, and a team made up of some solid parts was getting worse rather than better. It was clear from the complete change of lineups on a weekly basis, just like last season, that Manuel didn't have a clue what he was doing and he wasn't cut out for the job. Now the question remained, who would replace him? West Ham were treacherously positioned 1 point above the danger zone, and what man could rescue them from relegation other than the man who'd done it last time, David Moyes. Moyes was brought back and it felt all too right this time. And Moyes started the new decade with the much needed win he'd promised, chucking Bournemouth into the relegation zone where the Cockney boys had been as we defeated the lowly Cherries 4-0. Rice played out of his skin, stringing together immense passes, and the team appeared to look like a cohesive whole with a game plan. It was great to see Moyes get his first win back under his belt with a squad that looked very invigorated after a foul end to the year. A highly unusual 3-1-4-2 lineup was implemented in the next game, which got us the 2-0 win against Gillingham to progress to the fourth round of the FA Cup after some creative passes and easy finishes for the Hammers. The turnaround at the back heavily affected the side as Martin replaced the once again injured Fabianski. Martin gave away the ball for a cruel goal. Rice's unintentional handball at the end denied the equaliser, which forced us to accept defeat against the bitter victims of the Tevez saga years earlier, Sheffield United. Against Everton, two set pieces cancelled each other out in a 1-1 draw. West Ham looked the better team, however. In the next game, we got thoroughly outplayed against the Foxes with a weird formation as Antonio came off the bench in a 5-3-2 where Lanzini played on the right side. Things were beginning to look very dreary once again for West Ham. We had Randolph in goals in the forever merry-go-round of keepers. 4 goals were conceded on the day. In the FA Cup 4th round, we tumbled out against yet more lower league opposition in typical West Ham style. Sanchez knocked the ball off Diop, which deflected to a West Brom player to score. An atypical 4-2-2-2 formation was used in this game, where Antonio was once again notably played off the bench. In the next game, we fell to the historically good red side that would end the season 18 points clear at the top of the table. We conceded a penalty and a very good quality goal. We didn't play too bad ourselves considering the opposition, but playing well didn't matter so much at this moment. It was about getting results. We were in danger of isolating ourselves in the relegation zone once again. We played a 5-4-1 in this game. We notably only made one sub, that of Pablo Fornals. January signalled the arrival of some new signings, mainly the prolific striker from Hull Jared Bowen on a permanent deal, and the hard-working Czech midfielder Thomas Suchek on loan. 2 promising players to hopefully bring us out of the mire. Randolph was brought in, a player we previously talked about, while Roberto was loaned out for obvious reasons. Snodgrass had an amazing game against our bogey team Brighton, getting a goal and assist, but it was a bogey team after all, so we blew a 2-0 lead to draw 3-3 thanks to a defensive howler from Diop. Defensively, we're still shaky as hell. A very defensive looking West Ham got it chopped eventually with a dominant Man City, who could have had it more if it wasn't for a few moments of hesitation by Gabriel Jesus. In the end, the result was no surprise, and we got off lucky. A load of defensive howlers were bookended by a great defensive stop by Cresswell. Haller was injured, so there was no impetus up front. Jeremy Ngakia, another prospect in the team, filled in for Fredericks in the next game at Anfield, whilst Anderson joined to make a more attacking team than the City game. We responded well to a goal down with 2 straight. A great finish from Fornals off the bench from a nice set piece after a sub, and a great Diop header gave us a 2. Fabianski unfortunately had an awful error, dropping the ball through his legs to cost us a goal. This harkened back to the Arsenal days of Fabianski. Eventually, the Reds grabbed the win thanks to some sloppy plays by the Hammers. But alas, the Hammers had held a good account for themselves against the strongest squad in the league on their home turf. In the next game, the despair finally ended with the boys getting their first win in nearly 2 months against Southampton. Fornals and Bowen both started in a 4-4-2 formation, and by God did they make the difference with the final result. Fornals played an excellent pass with an excellent run and finish to match from Bowen, before Haller had the greatest of strikers' finishes to place the ball in the back of the net from the tightest of angles. Finally, the third goal arrived in victory as Haller held the ball up excellently on the break before it was played to Fornals, who sent a sublime pass around the defender to Antonio for the goal. A tit-for-tat game came next, with the woodwork being hit for both teams, ending with the Gunners triumphant after a smart play and a thumping strike from Lacazette. Props to the Hammers for putting up a good fight in this game, but there was no finishing touch. COVID struck a week later, and as we know, everything shut down for a good while. Karen Brady campaigned for the league to be cancelled given West Ham's position, but she was outvoted by the rest of the league, and Project Restart became a thing. Over 3 months later, West Ham miraculously would play their next game. These next few fixtures, kicking off in the summer, proved vital to our Premier League safety. Wolves annihilated us thanks to yet more horrific defending from Issa Diop, who forgot to mark his player. The player who had a promising first year was proven to have a terrible sophomore year. Crosses were killing us in this game, as both goals came from them. Ngakia, who was proving to be a glimmer of hope in the team, showing promise in the few appearances he made. The Hammers employed a 4-2-3-1 lineup once again in the next game, hoping for different results to last time in the game against Tottenham. Another curse was coming out on West Ham manager after the whole Pellegrini was at the wheel tweet from West Ham months earlier. Moyes was claiming winning was what he did, even though we were losing quite a bit. Bowen provided a lot of chances like in the Arsenal game, but they ultimately came to nothing. Spurs found us out after VAR, gave us some sort of reprieve, and we were comfortably beat. The next match is one of my favourite West Ham games I've ever seen. It was the stuff of dreams, a topsy-turvy game where the team on top kept changing. West Ham also had a close VAR call go against them. Chelsea took the lead before the Hammers answered back with 2 goals, thanks to new signees, Souček and Bowen linking up. Souček was in a similar position scoring than a disallowed goal. Antonio scored the brilliant second goal after a smart crossing assist from Bowen. The Blues equalised before the Irons went on a tearing counter-attack to grab the win. This was thanks to Yarmolenko off the bench, who grabbed a perfect finish on the breakaway from Rice and Antonio. A huge boost for West Ham's survival chances and an exhibition of how West Ham's squad could perform. In the next game, Bowen picked out a scarily similar assist for Antonio as the last game, with Fornals threading the through ball. Souček responded to a Newcastle goal with a poacher's finish on the rebound. We let in a late equaliser for Newcastle after some suspect defending, but there was clearly some fight in this team and we played the better, although we couldn't find the winner. Our momentum was still there going forward. We dominated the next game against Burnley, but we still lost thanks to a cheeky finish from Jay Rodriguez. We tried by getting Haller off the bench, but it just wasn't enough on the day. The next game came extremely quick, just 4 days after. Antonio scored 4 goals, yes 4, to down lowly Norwich to the championship, and yes, we were the better team. This win all but assured safety in the Premier League as well. The first goal was a nice easy finish with a clean head on by Diop. The second was a great header by Antonio, who hit it with the side of his head backwards to land in the bottom corner of the net. Noble helped out again with his second assist for Antonio, who did some nice running before nodding the deflection of his first time effort by the goalie in a slow looping arc into the goal. Antonio was smart yet again for his unprecedented 4th goal of the game, and surely the only time he will score 4 in his career. Watford were next, and Antonio's form continued with a very impressive difficult finish from far out with 2 nutmegs at the same time. Some nice interplay ensued with Rice and Souček, whose play may become pretty important for the team to come, wink wink. Bowen picked out an incredible curved cross for Souček to finish with a majestic diving header. Rice then picked out an incredible angled long range effort for the goal, leaving Ben Foster stunned in the middle of the goal. We conceded once, but this one didn't sting too much as the game ended 3-1. West Ham overall were clearly improving at the right time in the season. We took on the Red Devils in the next game, and a blatant handball led to Antonio scoring an easy penalty to give him 7 goals in 3 games. Stunning form. United equalised, but the Hammers finished strong and held a good account of themselves. Also to be noted, Ben Johnson was starting a lot of the last few games, an academy prospect where he would play at right back. This was cool to see. The last game of the season proved to be a more important game for the opposition than the Hammers. West Ham, already safe, had little to prove, whilst Aston Villa needed a point to guarantee Premier League safety. That showed today as the Irons played with little quality. Very little threat in the opposition apart from a dodgy deflection that resulted in a goal for the good. A spark of quality from Grealish on his long range effort kept Villa from relegation and sent Watford down. Overall, the season proved to be a similar one to the one 2 years ago, where the previous manager was sacked and Moyes came to the rescue with the team on the brink of relegation. Both sets of squads were better than results suggested, and the correct man was needed to get the potential out of the set of players. Surely Moyes was that man going forward. Antonio proved to be an energetic scoring powerhouse, especially towards the end of the season when it really mattered. Haller started strong but finished weak. Could this be resolved? Who knows. Rice continued his great play and got arguably better this season, running the midfield for West Ham. Souček and Bowen proved to be diamonds in the rough, found in the market. Great transfers into the team. Fornals was also a strong piece for the team. Offense would clearly be on the up going forward. One of the players who notably disappeared this season was Felipe Anderson. After a promising debut season, he was fading into the background for whatever reason. Moyes didn't seem to like him, unlike Pellegrini. Work rate surely played a part in this. Snodgrass was also on his way out, due mainly to age, even though he had been a valuable and underrated servant this year. The defence was clearly the place to improve, conceding 60 plus goals was not on. So, an overall more defensive first approach was needed, something that Moyes could offer and had done before successfully for many years at Everton. New signings were also needed. West Ham finished the season 5 points clear of relegation on 39 points, but had a lot to prove going forward, and hopefully that late season form was something to go by. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and check out some of my other videos. I do old season retrospectives and podcasts.